بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Tonight, inshallah, we'll be talking about the last and the final child of the Prophet ﷺ, his daughter Fatima bint Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We talked about all of his other children, male and female. The oldest, Zainab radiallahu anha, and she is the youngest. There are many ahadith that the Prophet ﷺ, he himself talked about who she was. So that will be the first thing to maybe mention of what the Prophet ﷺ, he himself said about his own daughter in praising her. One hadith that is mentioned in Bukhari, the Prophet ﷺ said, narrated by Miswar ibn Makhzamah radiallahu anh, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فاطمة بضعة مني فمن أغضبها فقد أغضبني. That Fatima is part of me. She is like part of myself. Whoever makes her angry makes me angry. Another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said about her, يَقْبِضْنِي مَا يَقْبِضُهَا وَيَبْسُطُنِي مَا يَبْسُطُهَا. It grieves me what grieves her and makes me happy of what makes her happy. وَإِنَّ الْأَنْسَابَ تَنْقَطِعُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ غَيْرَ نَسَبِي. That all the relationships, all of our friends, family members, and even our own parents and our children, our siblings will forget us. And no one will not want to have any relationship except for my nasab, for my children. So that includes Fatima radiallahu anha. And many ahadith of making her happy or being happy is what contingent with Fatima radiallahu anha, and liking her and disliking her. And another hadith, فَمَنْ آذَاهَا فَقَدْ آذَانِي. Whoever caused harm to her causes harm to me. And another hadith also adds that whoever causes harm to her children causes harm to me. And whoever causes harm to the Prophet ﷺ, what happens? They are disgraced in this world and the hereafter. And the history has actually shown that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected Fatima radiallahu anha, her chastity and the chastity of her children. And that's why the scholars say that she was one of the children of the Prophet ﷺ who was very shy and extraordinarily modest. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ quoting that when Fatima radiallahu anha, let's talk about that part first because then we'll understand this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said there's a variation of this hadith. One says that there are 4 women that have completed. Fatima, Maryam bint Imran, Khadija, and Asiya the Fir'aun. These 4 women have completed, meaning they were complete. In another variation, it says Khayrun Nisa, the best of the women. In one hadith, it says the best of women. First is Fatima, and then Khadija, and then the other 2 that he mentions. And there's also a variation of the 2 other names. Mashallah, the lady that combed Fir'aun and his family, right? So those hadith mention about being the best. So the ones the Prophet ﷺ was asked, Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Al Imran. Anybody ayah? Nisa'il Alameen. What is before that? Ya Maryam muqnuti li rabbiki wasjudi ma'ar raki'in. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. إذ قالت الملائكة يا مريم إن الله اصطفاك وطهرك واصطفاك على نساء العالمين. That Allah has chosen you above all the women of the alam, the universe. So the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah has chosen Maryam to be the best of the women of her alam, and you are the best of the women of your alam. So that's how he answered that question. On the Day of Judgment, the hadith that I was earlier going to mention, the Prophet ﷺ said that everyone will pass the Sirat, except for Fatima radiallahu anha. When she passes, it will be said that the daughter, Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, is about to pass the Sirat, lower your gaze. So because she was very, and it's mentioned according to some of the hadith, that when she died, she took her own ghusl, showered her own self, her own kafan, and she said, I don't want anybody to see my body after I die. And that's why she was given janazah right after that and buried, according to some of the historians. But others say that no, she was given actually ghusl, which is the farad kifaya, and ghusl meaning a bathe after a person dies, and given kafan, the shrouds, and was buried. However, Allah knows best, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this dua for Fatima. Inna Fatimata ahsanat farjaha فحرم الله وذريتها على النار. That Fatima radiallahu anha, she has protected her chastity, so Allah has protected her and her children from the hellfire. So that's one of the du'as of the Prophet ﷺ. Hakim narrates this hadith, and Abu Ya'la and Tabrani. There is a weakness in this hadith, but other scholars have mentioned another hadith, and they say after that this hadith, it comes to the level of Hasan, meaning that is acceptable. So these are a few hadith that I wanted to mention about the character of Fatima radiallahu anha, what the Prophet ﷺ said about her, and of course all the great Sahaba, they used to also look up to her. She was born on the second year of, she was born on the 35th year of the Prophet ﷺ's age, according to one narration. According to the other, there are 3 or 4. Some say that the Prophet ﷺ was 39, meaning 1 year before he became a prophet, and some say that she was born in the year when the Prophet ﷺ became a prophet, at the age of 40. However, she got married to Ali radiallahu anhu in the 2nd year of the Hijrah, meaning that after they migrated to Medina, and the family of the Prophet ﷺ as well, she got married to Ali when, according to the 35, if the Prophet ﷺ was 35 at that time, she was at this time 20 or 21. The earliest that what we know from the tarikh, from the history, is that she was 16. So the earliest 16 or 21, that's the latest, that what we know. And according to that, her date of the year that she died was obviously, we all know that it was the 6 months after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. And she was the first one from the family of the Prophet ﷺ to meet the Prophet ﷺ. There's a hadith that, although we could mention it later, but I think it's a good time. The Prophet ﷺ, when he was in his deathbed, after his wives were around him and they were discussing and they were kind of mourning, it seems like that, it was the last moment. It actually happened twice, the same incident. And both times the Prophet ﷺ said something to her in particular. But the one that I wanted to mention is that the Prophet ﷺ said to her and she cried. And then the Prophet ﷺ said to her again, quietly, whispered in her ear, and she laughed. So Aisha radiallahu anha, she was the greatest of the family of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of knowledge. Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, he talks about the best of all of them. Who were the best? So when it comes to Aisha, he says that she was the best in terms of her knowledge because she conveyed almost 1/3 of the knowledge of our tradition. And Fatima, on the other hand, we only know about 10 ahadith. Ibn Hajar also mentioned the same quote, same hadith. He says that approximately only 10 hadith that we know from Fatima radiallahu anha. So she was very, what did the Prophet say that made these two changes? And then she said, I cannot give you the secrets of my father. It's a secret. But after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, later on, she asked again, he said, now he's no more, so you're not obliged to keep that promise because that only stays until the person is alive. Then she said, yes. When he first whispered in my ears, he said, it looks like that I'm going to meet my Lord shortly, and very, very soon. So I couldn't hold up, and I started crying. And then he whispered again, and he said that you are the first one from my family member to join me. So she died 6 months after. There's a weak hadith that mentions 3 months, but the dominant opinion is 6 months after the Prophet ﷺ. She was the first one in the family to meet the Prophet ﷺ. What else can I mention before that? I was connecting this or something. Anyway, so at this time, according to the difference of opinion, the earliest, what they mentioned, the earliest of her age was 26 only when she died, only 26 years old. And the latest is 31, so she didn't live that long, very short period. Her early life was very close to the Prophet ﷺ, and being the youngest and being close to the Prophet, but she had a very special thing in her character. I've mentioned about Hassan and Hussein, her two male children. One resembled the Prophet ﷺ. This is a quiz actually. I should ask you guys. I want to know how much you remember. Who resembled the Prophet ﷺ in which way? From their children, from the grandchildren of the Prophet ﷺ. I mentioned from the top was Hassan, and from chest on the bottom was Hussein radiallahu anha. And who resembled the Prophet ﷺ in his character, in his akhlaq? Of course, both of them, but more specifically, Ja'far, the brother of Ali. Okay. Now, Fatima radiallahu anha, she resembled the Prophet ﷺ in her movements, like the way how she walked, the way how she talked, the way how she sat. So her movements, she used to resemble the Prophet ﷺ so much, and it should be that way because the Prophet ﷺ said that she is part of me, right? So she resembled the Prophet ﷺ in many actions. When she walked, Aisha radiallahu anha is her stepmother, right? Normally, those steps, they are not that great. But she says in one narration that I haven't seen someone greater than Fatima. From all the women that I've known, I've never seen anybody greater than Fatima. Because she walked like her father, she sat like her father, and she smiled and laughed like her father. So she resembled the Prophet ﷺ in her actions. Inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow for the rest. Subhanallah, bihamdi, subhanallah, al-azim. Subhanakallah, bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.